Wisdom begins with wonder. You didn't come here by accident. Maybe a part of you is searching for peace. If that's true, then subscribe to Buddha Pray and stay with me until the very end. Because here, every day, there's a story meant only for your soul. Let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a child look at a stranger on the street and cry, not out of fear, but out of pure empathy? Have you ever met someone who couldn't read or write, but spoke a single sentence that stayed with you for years? Why does true wisdom often appear in the most unexpected people? Why do the ones who say the least sometimes understand the most? Is it possible that wisdom doesn't begin with knowledge, but with wonder? Yes, with wonder. That sacred pause, when your heart doesn't know what to say, but your soul listens anyway. And that is where our story begins. His name was Elliot, a quiet man with calloused hands, a torn coat, and eyes that had seen more than they ever said. He lived in a dusty little town, made a living carrying water for rich houses up the hill. Every day he walked nearly 4 miles just to earn a few dollars. He never complained, never raised his voice, never asked for anything. Most people didn't even know he existed. To them, he was just that old man with buckets. But that was about to change. It was a bitter winter evening. The last bus was almost full. Elliot boarded slowly, his hands shaking from cold or maybe something deeper. As he took his seat near the back, he noticed a little girl, alone, huddled in the corner, no jacket, no shoes, no ticket. She was maybe 6, eyes wide with fear, but lips sealed in silence. The bus driver shouted, "Kid, this isn't a shelter. No ticket, no ride." No one moved, no one spoke, no one cared, but Elliot stood, slowly, quietly, without a word. He reached into his shirt pocket. He pulled out the only money he had, exactly the cost of 1 bus ticket. He walked to the front and handed it to the driver. "For the girl," he said softly. "I'll get off here. She needs the ride more than I do." And just like that, he stepped off into the freezing night. No one thanked him. The girl didn't even look back, but somewhere in the silence of that bus, a seed had been planted. Years passed. The little girl grew up. Her name was Clara. She studied hard, became a doctor, one of the best in the city. She never forgot the man on that bus, the man who gave up warmth for a stranger. One day, in the emergency room, an old man was wheeled in. No ID, no family, no one to claim him. He was unconscious, pale, fading. Clara glanced at the chart. The name field was blank, but as she looked at the old man's face, something stirred in her heart. A distant memory, a pair of kind eyes, a tattered coat. Her hands trembled. She whispered to a nurse, "Find out where he was picked up." The answer came. Near the bus stop, downtown, a place she hadn't been in years. The surgery was long, complicated. She stayed through the night, refused to leave. When it was done, she sat beside his bed. The old man never woke up, but in his pocket, wrapped in old plastic, she found it. A faded bus ticket from 23 years ago. Tears rolled down Clara's face. She pressed the ticket to her chest and whispered, "I remember you." No headlines were written, no photos were shared, but in that quiet hospital room, something sacred happened. A debt of kindness repaid, a full circle completed, a life honored, and a truth as old as time made itself known again. Sometimes the wisest among us speak no words, leave no footprints, and ask for nothing. But their choices echo across lifetimes. What is wisdom? Is it knowledge, education, a degree on a wall? In the eyes of the world, Mr. Elliot was a nobody. No university, no titles, not even a proper home. And yet, in one quiet moment, he embodied what many search for their entire lives: compassion without calculation, action without applause, wisdom without words. The Buddha once said, "Just as a candle cannot burn without fire, men cannot live without a spiritual life. Dhammapada Elliot's life was simple, but his inner world burned with something deeper, a silent awareness, a presence. He didn't need books to know what was right. He didn't quote scripture, he lived it. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha taught, "Better than 1,000 hollow words is one word that brings peace." Elliot didn't say much, but one small act, one wordless gesture, brought a lifetime of peace to a little girl named Clara. In Buddhism, we speak of prajna, true wisdom, not intellect, not cleverness, but the direct insight into the nature of reality, born from mindfulness, from compassion. Prajna isn't loud, it doesn't need to be, it arises naturally, when the heart is open and the ego is quiet. When Elliot gave up his bus seat, he let go of comfort, of self, of survival. That is the very essence of dana, the virtue of giving. If beings knew, as I know, the results of giving and sharing, they would not eat without having given. The Buddha, Itivuttaka. He didn't give because he had much. He gave because he had enough heart. In many sutras, the Buddha reminds us, "He who has compassion is near to me." And in that moment, Elliot was as close to enlightenment as anyone could be, not because he meditated on mountaintops, but because he chose kindness in a moment when the world looked away. What about Clara? Her life was shaped by that single act. She became a healer, a doctor, not just of the body, but of karma. That's karma in action, not punishment, not reward, but the mysterious unfolding of cause and effect. One action, one choice. And years later, the wheel turned. She became the one to hold his hand in silence, to sit beside him when no one else would, to repay a debt, not in words, but in presence. And that is the Dharma, not just what we say, not even what we believe, but how we respond when life offers us a chance to be the light. The lotus does not bloom in clean water, it blooms in mud. Just as wisdom often begins not in comfort but in wonder. Wonder at a kind face, at a gesture we didn't expect, at the strange, beautiful ways the universe ties lives together. So the next time you find yourself in a moment of stillness, don't rush past it. Pause, notice, feel. That might just be the very beginning of your own awakening, because wisdom doesn't always shout. Sometimes it begins as a whisper, a wonder, a breath. So now, I ask you, what would you have done if you were on that bus? Would you have looked away like everyone else? Would you have pretended not to see the girl shivering in the corner? Or would you have stood up? Would you have given even when you had nothing left? You see, this story isn't just about Elliot or Clara, it's about all of us, because life will always give us buses to ride, moments where we see suffering, moments where we see need, moments where we are the only one who can choose to look away or to act. But here's the truth. You don't need to be a monk to live with compassion. You don't need robes or mantras. You just need presence, awareness, and the courage to care. Elliot didn't give that girl money. He gave her something far greater, a message that someone still sees you, that even in this cold, forgetful world, there is still warmth. And maybe that's the message someone around you needs to hear today. So I'll ask again, who around you is silently waiting for kindness? Is it your mother, too tired to speak, but hoping you'll sit with her for 5 minutes? Is it a co-worker, always smiling, but hiding a storm inside? Is it a stranger you'll pass today, who just needs a smile, to remember they're not invisible? You never know which small act will change someone's life, or your own, because the truth is, when you help someone climb a hill, you end up closer to the top too. So maybe, just maybe, you came here today, not by accident. Maybe your soul was ready to be reminded of the light you carry. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more wonder, more silence that listens, more people who choose kindness, even when it's inconvenient. So tell me, have you ever been saved by a stranger's kindness? Have you ever ignored someone because it wasn't your problem? Do you believe that the most powerful acts are the ones no one ever sees? Let me know in the comments. Your story might just be the one that heals someone else tonight. And if this story touched something in you, then please, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you love, or someone who needs hope, or someone who forgot that goodness still exists. Subscribe to Buddha Pray, because every day this place will remind you, you are not alone, you are not forgotten, you are not powerless, you are the Elliot, the Clara, the light the world is waiting for. So walk gently, live mindfully, and remember, wisdom doesn't begin with knowing. It begins with wonder.